video, I'm going to speak to you about and explain to you how a baby's tongue works when breastfeeding. So all babies have are born with breastfeeding reflexes, which are very, very different to bottle feeding reflexes. So it's useful to be aware that if you want your baby to be predominantly or exclusively breastfed, it's really important to protect those reflexes, even if you are needing to use a bottle as a short-term solution whilst attending to any breastfeeding difficulties or challenges that you might be having. So when with the baby's tongue, so let's just use my hand as an example. Imagine my hand is a tongue, so this is the length of the tongue. What needs to happen is that the tongue needs to curl up on either side, so creating a trough in the middle. It then needs to be able to dart in and out of the baby's mouth, so extend beyond the lower gum ridge. And once it's done that, it will draw the breast into its mouth, so it's done this trough-like thing, and then it's also cupped in the front like that, and it anchors the breast in its mouth. And then it's not something that you can feel, but ultrasound imaging has been done, and you can see it on there, and I'm sure there's loads of things on YouTube that you can find around that. But the tongue will do this kind of wave-like peristaltic motion along the underside of the breast. So the tongue doesn't move that much, but it does a kind of like undulating wave-like motion. And that sends signals to the mother's brain, okay, we need to release milk, and then the milk will start to flow. So the baby will be doing the suckling action for a little while, and then the milk will start to flow. And then once the milk starts to flow, the tongue then, so if we do it this way, so this is a cross-section of the tongue, if you can just bear with me and imagine. So the tongue is like that. And then what will happen is that it will actually curl the milk or push the milk to the back of its mouth and then lift up like that, and swallow. So I'll see if I can find a useful video of that to link to, so that you can see better what I'm trying to explain. But there's a lot that the tongue needs to do in order to be able to draw the breast into its mouth, anchor the breast in position, and do that wave-like motion, and move the milk to the back of its mouth, and swallow. So all around here impacts, as well as our necks, impacts on the way our tongue functions, as well as if you look in the mirror under your tongue, some people will see a piece of thick skin anchoring the underside of the tongue to the floor of the mouth, and this is it's called a frenulum. So what many families who are breastfeeding struggle with, or certainly there are the many that I see, and obviously people come to me when they are experiencing challenges, is something called a tongue tie. So a tongue tie is where the tongue is anchored to the underside of the mouth in a way that reduces or impacts the tongue function. Okay, so to assess if a baby has a restricted tongue function, or commonly known as a tongue tie, a full infant feeding assessment needs to be done by a qualified practitioner. We need to remember that not all healthcare professionals are qualified, and we need to remember that not all breastfeeding counselors and consultants are qualified in tongue tie assessments either. So it's really, really important that if you think that your baby has restricted tongue function or a tongue tie, that you request a full tongue function assessment from a qualified practitioner, a tongue tie practitioner. So You can have a look online. There are directories of lactation consultants who are also tongue tie practitioners. And these assessments last round about minimum an hour to up to 3 hours. And in that time, what is being assessed is the consultant or the tongue tie practitioner will will have their finger in the baby's mouth gently, and will be feeling for different things that the tongue is doing or not doing. There are 8 different assessments that will be done inside the baby's mouth by feeling, okay? Then also they will visually observe how the baby is attaching to the mother's breast and how the baby is behaving at the breast once it's attached, or if it's not attaching at all, what's going on. The other thing that's really important is that an entire feed is observed. So we know that newborn babies can feed anywhere from 5 minutes to 45 minutes. So thinking about observing a full feed, doing the full tongue function assessment, and observing how the baby's behaving at the breast before it actually attaches, that's a lot of time, okay? You can't just look inside a baby's mouth and say, oh yeah, we think they've got a tongue tie, or oh, we don't think they've got a tongue tie. It's a very, very involved assessment that needs to take place, okay? So when I was talking about kind of our jaw and our neck having an impact on how our tongue behaves, that's really useful to be aware of, especially for babies who have been, for women who've labored for a long time and then their babies were born very suddenly, thinking about the pressure on the baby's head and then all of a sudden there's no pressure. Or perhaps if the baby's been in a bit of an odd position in the womb, maybe they've got a bit of a crick in their neck. Or for babies who have been born by assistance, so either forceps or ventouse or a cesarean birth. There's often a lot of pulling of the head, and this is going to impact on their neck and their shoulder and their jaw muscles. Just think about if you've got a stiff neck, it can often be uncomfortable for you to open your mouth really wide, or you just kind of don't really want to move. And sometimes what's been discovered is that even if a baby is perhaps holding tension in their hip, what often tends to happen is that they will counteract that by holding their neck in a certain way. So it's really useful for if you have encountered any of these things that I've mentioned, that perhaps you want to observe how your baby is behaving when they're laying on their back on a flat surface. Do they have a tendency to only look one way? Is it easier for them to turn their head one way or the other? When they open their mouth, how wide are they opening their mouth? Are they comfortable to open their mouth? All of those things will provide you with nuggets of kind of information on how comfortable your baby is when feeding, or when trying to feed, when attaching to the breast. Just looking at my notes. So a lot of people aren't aware of that, and you know they don't kind of think about all the processes that a baby needs to kind of work through in order to efficiently transfer the milk from mum to baby. So hopefully you find that useful.